In this episode of Contracting Conversations, we're jumping into NASA's new spacesuit, an update on 40-year-old technology to keep our explorers safe from the moon to Mars. What does it take to get boots on the lunar ground? And what's the ticket to launching industry into competition over the astronauts' new outfit? We'll learn this and more from Bradley Niese, the Acting Director of Procurement for the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. I'm Scott Williams, along with my co-host Jim Valley, coming to you straight from our booth at the NEXUS 24 conference in Jacksonville, Florida. We're here at NCMA NEXUS conference in Jacksonville, Florida. We have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Bradley Niese. He's from NASA Johnson Space Center down in Houston, and is the Acting Director of Procurement. So thanks for stopping by and talking with us here at the DAU booth. And tell us a little bit about the team and how it came together and what you were able to achieve, all those good things. And we look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys very much for having me. Excited to be here. Acting Director of Procurement at the Johnson Space Center, and go back a handful of years in 2022, or 2021 rather. We were working diligently to replace our NASA spacesuits. So the white spacesuits that our astronauts use to spacewalk outside of the space shuttle and the space station to do maintenance and required activities in outer space, we needed a new spacesuit. So those spacesuits were built in the 1970s, designed and built in the 70s, and used through the whole shuttle program in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s until the shuttle was retired. They're still in use on board the International Space Station today, but it's old technology. We have parts obsolescence. It's hard to replace some of these parts, and it was time for a replacement. And NASA is working diligently on a Moon to Mars program, right? Returning astronauts back to the surface of the moon. So we had a real need for an exploration spacesuit, in addition to the spacesuit on the International Space Station. So we kicked off a source evaluation team to go buy new suits, right? So this has been an activity and work for more than a decade, right? Suits are a legacy program, sole source for a very long time, with a great company that's done very reliable suits. So terribly critical piece of hardware to keep our astronauts alive, right? So safety was paramount. Competition was paramount because it didn't exist. So going back about a decade ago, NASA at the Johnson Space Center, we were really trying to look into the supply chain of the current suit contract that we had, and how do we help enhance competition for some of these key components that make up this spacecraft, right? It's a spacecraft for a human. And so probably in like the 2017 timeframe, we started a government-furnished program, a GFE program within JSC, within the Johnson Space Center, to build an exploration demo suit. And through procurement at JSC, we started going out to suppliers on these critical components, multiple suppliers, and awarding smaller dollar development contracts to build capability in the supply chain that wasn't there, to hopefully build competition that wasn't there, all about trying to seed a marketplace for a future major suit development program. And so that took place in the late 20-teens of 2018, 2019, 2020, which got us to the 2021 timeframe when we start up the big source, we call it at NASA the Source Evaluation Board, which is the source selection team that's going to go develop the strategy, the requirements, RFP, and go through that process for award. And we had a great team. We went from procurement strategy development on a suit strategy to contract award in 10 months.
Wow, that is fast.
10 months. I mean, really fast. And we can talk more about some of the details, but some of the pressures we were up against was we had a demanding timeline to support boots on the moon. At the time, we were trying to return humans by 2024 to the lunar surface, and we didn't have a spacesuit, right? And we're in 2021, and so the development, the testing, the training to enable an astronaut to use one of these suits in that amount of time. Schedule was paramount. So speed was the name of the game, but safety also paramount because of the criticality of this piece of technology. So it was quite remarkable. The team that we pulled together in the 2021 timeframe and what they were able to pull off in 10 short months. We made multiple award IDIQ contract, 2 awards, 2 $3.5 billion awards to 2 companies where we didn't have competition prior. We ended up with competition, and we were able to select 2 companies that are running dual path, which maintains competitive pressure in our portfolio. It keeps technical redundancy should one fall behind, which ensures risk mitigation for the agency for a critical piece of hardware, which is really valuable to us. And we've got a suit vendor, 2 suit vendors under contract. We went from what was a traditional government ownership model of buying a suit and we owned them and we operated them, where we're buying suits as a service now.
Right.
So we have 10-year contracts with these vendors to provide EVA as a service to us, and a very innovative, efficient IDIQ contract that gives us flexibility with the benefits of having the competition. And they're going to be providing suits for NASA well into the 2030s. Enabling boots on the moon for our human moon campaign, and to eventually get up on the International Space Station to help augment and maybe replace those aging suits into the future.
So that is fascinating. And the purpose for coming here is because you guys are considered a success story, and we want to get other teams to see how you did this so they can be successful also. So one of the key aspects to be successful is to integrate all the functionals, right? There's a whole bunch of functionals: contracting, finance, engineering, logistics, program management that has to, and many others that have to work together. So how did you do that? Because that's the only way you can really get speed.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, considering the myriad of challenges we had on that procurement, I mean, it took leadership at the top, right? So we had a very strong program manager on the technical side who took ownership of it. I mean, our program manager, she was in charge of a huge portfolio, not just suits, but she dedicated the time at her top level. And at the time, I was deputy director of procurement at the time, and it was her and I intentionally meeting every week on this major activity to ensure we had the right leadership team. And so handpicking the right leaders in these functional areas, or working with the leadership of those functional areas to get the right buy-in and support at their level. And then just executing a kind of a project plan, right? So between the program manager and myself and our source selection team that was working it, meeting periodically, what are the issues that you need us at the top to help you? What walls do you need us to help break down, right, at the top? And then we would work across the functionals at the right level, whether it's NASA headquarters or even locally at the center, to go help the source evaluation team to be successful. I'll pick on the requirement side. I mean, a terribly complex spacesuit, right? Highly critical safety. We own these suits for 30 years from the legacy suit. The requirement activity to go from a government ownership operating model to a suit as a service, really difficult to get the engineers aligned to this vision of a suit as a service, right? That took top leadership at the center, the Johnson Space Center, to lead that charge with our engineering directorate, who are the really smart folks in the room, to ensure this thing works in the way it's supposed to work, to define the requirements in a service model, right? We ended up with about 97 requirements, key requirements in our RFP that matter to us, right? That really matter, considering the old model had hundreds of requirements. So, I mean, getting the right leadership on the technical side of the house, the legal side of the house. Another example, a big challenge. Suit as a service, we didn't have ability to incrementally fund it because it was a non-severable item. So not to get too technical, but non-severable service shall be fully funded, and we didn't have ability to incrementally fund it. That said, a $3.5 billion fixed price contract for a suit, that's 10 years. We don't have that kind of money sitting around. So it required getting the right stakeholders at NASA headquarters and legislative affairs and CFO, procurement, legal, and we worked at the right level at the center leadership and with NASA headquarters to get appropriations language inserted into a bill, and actually got an act of Congress passed to enable incrementally funding this contract strategy. So it's a really good example of, we got the normal procurement products, but there's other enablers or barriers that we had to work across functionals to make happen, and it's not something that we do locally. We had to reach out to our functionals at headquarters who work with the congressional stakeholders to make legislation a reality.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yes, Jim mentioned the importance of working with the functions within the team, but as you addressed, you had 2 contractors that you're working with. So how important is that relationship, and what do you see some of the key tenets of that as you grow that relationship through the contract, how that's been working out with two folks?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's pros and cons with everything, right? And so in this competitive market that we find ourselves in, environment with 2 vendors, we have to challenge ourselves internally as a government team to protect their proprietary designs, right? They own these suits. And so it's great to have 2 vendors that we're collaborating with and partnering with. And then there's an extra burden on the government side to make sure we're being good partners, right? Because we can't jeopardize their data or anything like that. And that's a different environment when you go from sole source environment. You can work a little more openly within just the technical day-to-day. So that was something that we had to be intentional about down and in with our providers post-award. Pre-award, we had a great partnership as well. I mean, one of the things we pride ourselves at the Johnson Space Center is our openness and our collaboration with industry throughout the entire procurement process, and doing something to compete a suit that was sole source for 40 years was really challenging, and we had a lot of naysayers that thought it could never be done. And so collaborating with industry at the earliest stage of our strategy planning, getting feedback from them on our requirements set, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, doing site visits to these potential interested parties. So we had a really, I would say, open collaboration with interested parties throughout that procurement process to make sure what we were doing, at the end of the day, our strategy, our procurement strategy would not be successful if it didn't meet commercial business needs as well, because we're trying to commercialize this suit as a service that could serve multiple customers, not just NASA, but NASA's working on commercializing low Earth orbit with private space stations and other potential users of this model. And so we were trying to be good partners with industry to make business cases close for them while meeting our requirements. And so open collaborations was the ticket for that, to make sure when we issued that final RFP, we had a requirement set that scratched both itches.
All right, fantastic. So we're about out of time. So is there anything you want to add before we head out? Is there something, a key takeaway that you want the folks here at NEXUS to get?
I would say relationships is the thing that I preach to my folks and to everyone in acquisition. And every government agency buys a lot of really interesting, really challenging things, and we can get things done, and we can get things done much easier if we have good relationships. And that's what it starts at the top, setting the right tone. We're going to work this together in a very collaborative manner, and it extends beyond just within the government. It's to our contractor counterparts, our industry stakeholders. So relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So thank you, sir, for coming on the show today.
Really appreciate y'all having us.
All right.
For having me.
That's exciting. There's a lot more we can go into that, but not for today. We'll have to talk about that. So for all those out there, that's the end of the show today. But if you like the content, please press the like button. Please subscribe to our podcast at DAU Media or YouTube or Apple Podcasts. And we look forward to seeing you next time.